Hello. It is story time with Teacher Kate. It is Friday, November 7th, 2025, and I'm doing a series of cities where I've lived and some stories about what it's like living in various places around the world. And Amsterdam is one of my favorite cities. So the photo I'm showing you is the central train station. And it doesn't look like that now. I deliberately got one from 2001, which is when this story takes place. Um, it was a wonderful place. I lived right around the corner, so it was really convenient. You could get a bus, you could get a train, you could get a boat. It was just, a hub of the city. And it's really strong in my memory because of the buskers that used to be allowed in front of the train station. So there would be like a Peruvian family in full dress doing Peruvian music, and you throw coins at them. There would be artists doing. There was a guy that was a living painting. He had like on this stretch rubber thing, and his hands and face would, come out of the painting, and he never said anything. It was all pantomime. And so if a pretty girl walked by, he would make a face or whistle at her or something. But you just never knew what you were going to see in front of the station. Now they banned them and they remodeled the whole front. So it's kind of like a time capsule for me. All these audios are a bit of a time capsule for me because it's going back 24 years for this one. It was 25 for the last one. But I want to tell you about what it was like to be in Europe on September 11th, 2001, because I do remember that day pretty clearly. I think most of us do, no matter where we were. We remember that day. So this is what my day was like. There is at least 8 hours difference between Amsterdam and New York. So, that would be like 11 from Amsterdam to West Coast, but New York time, 8 hours. So 9 a.m. in New York would have been early afternoon for me. So I remember I had been down in an area where there were a lot of art shops. I mean, art supply shops. I mean, Amsterdam, if you want to learn art, and that's why I was there basically, there's no better place. So I had been painting a series of the Himalaya mountains, and I was painting. There's like 8 of the highest mountains, and I was painting from photographs. So but I was getting them framed or getting them matted. But so I had been down there, and one of the most marvelous feelings I've ever had in my life was that morning. I remember I had just had like 2 of the mountains matted and framed, and I was going to put them up in the apartment, of course. So, but they were big and bulky. So I remember carrying them home. I mean, they had wrapped them up in brown paper and string and all that. So, I mean, it wasn't that hard to carry them, but they were bulky. And it was one of those situations where taxis were expensive in Amsterdam. The bus and the subway and stuff were cheap, but it was like a 25-minute walk. But I didn't really want to get on a tram with that thing, so I just decided to hoof it. So I had, quite a bit of a walk that morning. And I got home and put the package down and unwrapped it. And, I'm admiring my paintings. And I turned on the television, and I didn't watch a lot. Believe it or not, if you want to learn a foreign language, and you're embarrassed to take lessons, because I've been there, there's nothing worse. I mean, I'm a teacher, but there's nothing worse than being the dumbest kid in the class, no matter what class it is. So I've been in beginner language classes many times. And, but I learned that if I watched Dutch Sesame Street, I would learn two or three new words and a number every day. So that's my advice for learning some basics, get along language. But I turned it on and I saw a building on fire and it looked like New York. And I looked at the clock and I remember it was a little after 3. And I looked at the TV and I looked at the clock and I thought, well, it's really early for a movie. And that was the first thing that went through my mind is this is a movie. And it was CNN, actually. Dutch television was broadcasting CNN Live. And so it was in English. And I realized, I mean, I must have sat there and watched for 10 or 15 minutes. So, it's like 3:30, quarter to 4 now. And I was on the 3rd floor, but I opened my window and I looked down at the street to see, because often there would be people, friends, in front of the coffee shop. And I didn't see anybody. And my instinct was I had to tell somebody. I didn't know what to do. So I ran downstairs and I went in the coffee shop. And it was kind of the guys were there. My female friends didn't happen to be there. Marcel was behind the counter. And he and his buddies, they were watching something on TV. And I thought they were watching what was going on in New York. And I said, hey, guys, turn the TV on. And they said, we have it on. And there was a soccer match on or something that they were watching. And I said, turn the channel. I don't remember what number 9 or whatever. I said, something's going on in New York. I said, I think New York is being attacked. And so they turned the channel and we watched it for a few minutes. And then Marcel turned it to a different channel. And this one was all in Dutch. So nobody said anything. And so they're watching it in Dutch. And I'm like, my Dutch, even after 2 or 3 years, was pretty crappy. So I went back upstairs to my apartment. And so I just kind of sat there and, like everything, made coffee. I didn't call anybody in America. I'm not a telephone person. I mean, I'm an email person. I'm a DM person, but I'm really not a telephone person. So I didn't think about, I didn't have any family in New York. So I wasn't concerned about that. So later on, I remember the sun was setting and April evenings, it's cool, so, I mean, September evenings is cool. So I have my window closed and all of a sudden I start hearing pings and that's somebody below throwing a rock at my window trying to get my attention because the buzzer didn't work. And I opened the window and, gosh, Jacques and Mika were down there and there were a couple others. And they were like, what are you doing? And I said, I don't fucking know what I'm doing. And they said, come down, come down. I said, I don't know if I was just that way. They knew me. I didn't always come down when they wanted me to. I came down when I wanted to. And so they said, we are coming up. So they marched up the stairs and, they came in and we had coffee and we smoked and, we turned the television off, if I remember right. And we did not talk about New York. I mean, it was dark by then and nobody had eaten yet. And we decided to go get something to eat. And Mika and I on Friday night, we had a habit, kind of a tradition to go out to eat. And we would go to the red light district. And because there are so many restaurants. I mean, anything you are craving, you will find it in the red light district. But, that's kind of another story. But we went out and we had something to eat, and it was nice. And I just remember it was such a vacation from America, sitting with my girlfriends. And I think we were outside, believe it or not. I remember being cold. I was either always cold or I always had to pee, because in Holland, there's no such thing as free bathrooms in many places in Europe. They're pay, or you can't just go into a shop and expect to use the toilet. That's insulting. So we were walking home, and I'm ahead of them and I'm walking really fast. And Lydia and Mika and Jacques are behind me. And Lydia yells, "Hey, do you have to pee?" I said, "Yes, Lydia, I have to pee." And so we get to my door, which I showed in the last video. And the girls gave me a hug. And I think Mika came up. Jock and Lydia have husbands and families. They went home, but Mika came up with me. And we just sat and talked for the longest time. But for the rest of that week, so that would be September 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th. Every time I left my apartment to go shopping, to buy flowers, to do my daily things, especially I remember going to the flower market, and the flower ladies knew me because, I came at least every week because they were cheap. That's another story. But I went to buy flowers, and I went to my favorite tulip lady, and my nickname in the neighborhood was the American lady, even though I was not the only American in the neighborhood and I wasn't the only American woman, but that was just the name that they all gave me, and everyone knew who they were referring to. Uh, I read tarot cards in that coffee shop, so that's another reason why the name kind of stuck. But no matter where I went, um, like at the flower market, she knew I was American. And she said to me, she just kind of grabbed my hands and she said, "Do you have family in New York?" I don't want to cry. And I said, "No, ma'am, I don't have any family in New York." And she gave me just this big bunch of tulips. And she said, "Well, these are from me for American families, for you, because our hearts are with you." And it's making me cry because Europeans don't like Americans. They didn't like us in 2000, and they certainly don't like us now. But I walked home with this big bouquet of flowers. And as I'm walking by, there were a couple of workmen. They're always remodeling. I mean, they don't tear buildings down, they fix them. And there were these two guys that had been around, a few buildings down from me, doing this. And I'm walking past and I looked up, and I don't talk to men when I'm alone in foreign countries. It's just not my habit. I just don't, don't ask for that. So I'm walking by, and one of the guys goes, "Mooi bloemen," and that means pretty flowers. And I looked up at him and I kind of smiled and nodded my head. And he went, "Oi, American lady." And I turned back around and he blew me a kiss, and I'm trying to remember what the Dutch was. He didn't say, "I love you." It was more, "We love you," kind of Dutch too. He knew I was American. So I had several encounters like that in my neighborhood. And there are times when I am incredibly allergic to America. I don't live there now. When I do go back, I go to my hometown where my son and grandson are. The longest I've been able to tolerate it is 2 years. And the politics, the attitude, everything is beyond it, it just stresses me out. And I'm now in Mexico and happier than I've ever been. But so America, I think the world wants to love us. And there was a time when they loved us more, or I should say, hated us less than they do now. So who knows? I want to have faith in humanity that we're going to fix this, but I don't know. So that was September 11th, 2001.